Hey folks, welcome back. Alright, today is lesson 2. And now I know what you're thinking. When was the last time somebody said I know what you're thinking and they were actually right? But I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, is he going to keep wearing the same green shirt for the entire course? And the answer is, you'll just have to wait and find out. So today, we're going to be looking at the major topics of this course, the major modules, and defining each of those terms. And we're going to do that through one question. And that question is, what changes? So we're going to be listening to some music, and as an element changes, we're going to pause and identify, try to tune our ears into that element. After all, that's the approach of this whole course. Elements of music is to have us be able to parse out and separate and recombine the magical combinations of harmony and melody and rhythm and timbre, etc. And so today we're going to define those terms. We're going to do it through this question: what changes? Changes and face the strange changes. I wanna be a richer man. Changes and face the strange changes. It's just gonna have to be a different. I've got some examples from my friend Elliot Cole, who gave us permission to use all of this unpublished music of his. I think he made them in kind of a journal like way over the years, and just made something and put it in the journal. So thanks to Elliot. Great composer. Go check out his music, Elliot Cole, if you're intrigued. So I'm using his music for 2 reasons, 3 reasons maybe. One, because I like it. 2, because YouTube tends to stop us from using musical clips. That's why you just heard me performing David Bowie. I didn't want our video to get taken down, so I had to do it myself. And number 3, because I don't know all of the music in Elliot's journal, it gives us a nice grab bag to pick from. So here we go. We're going to start with this first one, Hermit Thrush, and see if we can ask ourselves this question: what changes? All right, I hope you enjoyed that. So, when I first set out to do this little exercise, I wanted to find something where only one little thing changed, so we could be really clear about what elements changed. But music, like life, is complex, and so a couple things changed here. And this was not a quiz at all, it's just meant to introduce our topics. So, the first thing that I noticed that changed here was the percussion. It changed from like a drum set, kind of a groovy drum set, into more like hand percussion, maybe Latin percussion, congas, and that kind of stuff. So that's the main thing that jumped out to me first. Upon further listenings, I noticed that actually the pitch of the hermit thrush, which is a bird, went down significantly, almost an octave or near an octave down, which just means it moved down a lot in its pitch. So we could say the percussion changed, the pitch of the bird sample changed, and lastly, I noticed, it almost slipped by me, but that the key was changing of the bass, or at least the chords were changing in the bass. Okay, so by no means do I expect you to have gotten all of this. The goals here are 2 things. One, to just tune our ears into picking up different elements of music, things like rhythm, things like pitch. And secondly, to introduce the topics of the course. So this already brought up a couple things. And even though when we think of percussion, let's start with that. When we think of percussion and drums, we think of rhythm, right? Because the main focus, you might say, of drums is rhythm. Maybe some drummers out there are going to take issue with what I just said, but a drum set plays rhythms. All instruments play rhythms. And yet The rhythmic element here might have changed a little bit, but it didn't change shockingly from my point of view. Instead, what changed about that was which percussion instruments are being used. Okay, maybe the rhythm changed too, and we can add that to the list. But the first thing that jumped out to me was that it changed from a drum set with a kick drum and a hi hat, snare. Probably these are samples of existing players out there in the world, maybe in Ableton. So a drum set into hand percussion. So the difference there, or what changed, I think the simplest answer here is the instrument of the percussion changed, or the instruments of the percussion changed. And when we have a change of instrument, that's what we file under the category of timbre. So timbre is a French word that means stamp, like a particular sound of something. So the sound of my voice versus the sound of your voice, the sound of a trumpet versus the sound of a flute. That's what we call timbre. And that is module 3 in this course, which focuses on acoustic instruments and electronic sounds and the differences between those sounds. So that's the first thing that jumped out. You can think about it this way, like if you play in a band and you play a little melody, and then right after you play the melody on guitar, someone else in the band plays that melody on saxophone. But it's the same melody, the same notes. Then what you could say changed was the timbre, the instrument, which is a type of timbre change. Okay, so that's the main thing that jumped out to me here. Like I said, I noticed then afterward that the pitch of the hermit thrush changed. So this is a recorded sample of a hermit thrush, which are some of the most beautiful bird songs. Around where I live, we have a lot of wood thrushes, which make a similar piping sound. So Elliot slowed that down so we can hear more of the beautiful, complex melody. The normal thing is extremely fast. In fact, in the next lesson, or one of the next lessons, I'll be showing you the Merlin Bird ID app and how you can go out and identify birds with sound and also track your own sound using that app. Anyway, so he slowed down and therefore also lowered the pitch of the bird sound. And so between these two sections in the song, we also have a change of pitch. So that is probably a more simple concept to grasp in so far as just imagine yourself playing a little melody and then playing it lower or higher on an instrument. That's a change of pitch. And pitch is the module 5 in this course, where we talk about what pitches sound good together, how to make a melody, and we study a little bit about notes and what we perceive as A, B, C, D, E, D sharp, and the complexities of pitch. So that's module 5. And lastly, like I said, I noticed that maybe the key changed. Now, key in music is something that we would file under harmony, which is module 6 in this course. Harmony is chords and how chords progress in a song and how multiple notes go together at the same time. So it's the multiple notes at the same time and also how those progress in time. So a change of key, I would file under harmony. You could say it's a change of pitch as well. Of course it is. I also wanted to mention that the use of the bird sound here is a great example of what we're going to be talking about in Module 2, which is about nature and music. So this isn't something that changed in the song, but it does give us a good chance to talk about Module 2. So that's what we're going to be getting into, how nature affects music and how music is derived from nature and all of that in between. Now let's move on to the next example. Okay, so this was a fun one. I'm not sure exactly what kind of trickery he's up to in this, but I enjoyed it. There was something in particular I was pointing to here, but I think at this point I can admit that there's probably no example I can find where we couldn't point out multiple changes. So there are multiple right answers, but the main thing that I heard here was a change of tempo. Tempo means how fast does the beat go. So we'd file that under rhythm, and rhythm is module 4 in this course. Tempo is one of the elements of rhythm. We also have the rhythmic durations like quarter notes and half notes. Then we have things like swing and groove and that sort of thing. But tempo is part of that major heading. So that's the main thing I heard. Now, I think it's kind of interesting because I tried to track the tempo, um, and you can do that with like a free tempo tap uh, website or app where you just tap along with the beat. And it seemed like it was kind of gradually moving up. Um, but then there's sort of a moment where it gets faster. But anyway, the tempo seemed to get faster from around, I don't know, maybe 106 beats per minute up to something more like 112. But it is a little tricky what he's doing here. So if you just felt like the rhythm was modulating and moving and undulating, then I think that could be true too. So obviously there are other things that changed here. He's changing chords, and he's what we call arpeggiating chords, meaning playing each note in the chord. Um, and so obviously the chords are changing the whole time. It's possible there's even another change of key, and both of those would be filed again under harmony, which is our module 6. Um, so the main thing I heard was tempo, and I hope you enjoyed that. Let's go on to the next one. All right, I hope you enjoyed that last example. So in this one, quite a lot changes, right? There's a sort of gap, and then it's almost completely different, but there's some relationship. So in the first part, we hear a piano with this kind of echoey filigree. It could be Elliot's Bloom's concept, which, if you're interested, go look that up. So it's a piano, echoey piano sounds, and a little bit of kick drum, maybe like a little tap or something like that. Okay, so it's be hard to categorize the style of this if it's not really classical, but it's got this cool hybrid thing with this kind of dance music and yet some classical influence. All right, then we get to the second half, and it's like electronic-y, synthesized sounds and warped sounds, ascending synths, and possibly even like a voice sample that's been kind of warped and echoed. And then there's a really clear, like bassy sound. Whatever the case, it's all really different, especially in terms of timbre. So, timbre is definitely changed. We already discussed timbre earlier. And then we could also identify just a simple change of form. Now, form is just the sections of a song. So that's going to be module 7. And technically, that would apply to any song because anytime there's a change from verse to chorus or from section A to section B, then we have a change of form. So all of these have a formal change, but this one's very striking. Okay, and then there's a very clear change because of all these things in style or maybe even genre. So even though it's hard to categorize or specifically label what style this unique music is in, either in the first section or the second section, there is a change. So, style, we might think of something like playing a bluesy guitar style where you bend a lot of notes and it has a particular flair to it, versus I don't know, a 60s rock style. If you think about playing on an instrument, even think about doing something like Happy Birthday, but doing it in a bunch of different styles, where there's a smooth jazz Happy Birthday style and a medieval music style Happy Birthday. So that in this course we're going to put under expression, and that's module 9. So in module 9 we'll talk about style and genre as well, which would be things like jazz, rock, the whole container of those types of music. So in this song we did have a clear change of style. Even though the two sections go together in some way, there's a change in the sound, almost like you're going into a different song or even a different artist. Um, so keep in mind that many songs change timbre, form, rhythm, harmony, and melody from section to section, but they don't always change style or genre. This isn't the only example. It may be a little bit more common than we might think, but just note how usually the depth of style is maintained throughout a song. Okay, and then finally, this leads us to just mentioning our last module. And this isn't something that changed in this example, but it does bring up the topic. And the last topic, the last module, is Module 10, Originality. And I think this is a great example of originality, um, where, like I was just saying, we have a kind of unique situation where there are many stylistic elements, many musical elements being put together by the composer, and a unique situation, undoubtedly creating originality. And of course, that's a whole spectrum of how original or how personal, how unique music is. It's not the only important element. You could make a song that sounds like a lot of other songs and not be very original and still have it be a great song. And still, that's our last module, Module 10. So I hope that from today's lesson you got both a taste of gearing your ear towards certain elements of music, and then also an overview of all 10 of our modules. Thanks for your attention, and next time we start Module 2, Nature Music, and I'll see you there.